Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. We Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Oh, good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here on Saturday morning, and it's morning here for me, and I know that whatever time you watch this is perfect. I am Reverend Dr. Victoria Bomberry, and I live in Riverside, California, and I have a ministry called Wing Spirit, and I am always happy to be a participant here with New Thought Media Network on this special day of celebrating the writings of the founder of Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes. And today we're going to look at something from the archives, and it's a Holmes Reader on practical wisdom. And it is the first edition was November 1996. So this was a posthumous publication of, I'm just assuming that this was a talk that was transcribed, if it is a first edition. And it could have been something that they found in his papers, but, I think it was probably a talk or a class that was given by Ernest Holmes. And, one of the things that I love about the archives is that we get to find these hidden gems, right, that we can bring into our life. And, I was drawn to this because it is titled A Holmes Reader on Practical Wisdom, right? Sometimes we think about wisdom as being something that is very high-minded or lofty or very difficult to achieve. We may think, oh, there's a certain people who possess wisdom in life, and yet there's all kinds of wisdom that allows us to operate in the world. And wisdom, a good definition of wisdom is knowledge and information, discernment, insight. It brings to bear all human experience and the ways that we gather information in order to make sound decisions for ourselves. So that would be something that would be considered wisdom. And I like that kind of definition because it takes into account, that most important part of our lives, which is experience. We don't get wisdom handed down to us like an injection, we or a transmission necessarily. We learn by doing and by listening carefully, by being in tune with spirit. All of the capacities of being human, all those gifts that we have as human beings are brought to bear in wisdom. They result in wisdom. You can be a knowledge seeker You can seek knowledge, you can study as hard as you want, and that might not give you wisdom, right? You might have some, what people used to call book smarts, but you might not have any wisdom. You could listen. You can listen and gather all the information possible on a certain topic, or many topics as we do these days, and not have wisdom. It's bringing together all of those human gifts and capacities that are God given that bring us to that point of wisdom. So, one of the things that I love about looking at these documents is, yes, sometimes we have to rely on descriptions, because the cover of this just says Holmes Reader on practical wisdom. And in the very first paragraphs, it talks about the cover of this book, this little booklet. And the cover is the Nautilus. And if you recall, the Nautilus is that beautiful sea creature that has the spiral, and that spiral Holmes imagery all the time. One of my favorite is, just thinking about this upward spiral of our spiritual development that we are all journeying on. And this is not only Ernest Holmes imagery; it's an imagery that is throughout the world. This symbol of the spiral, and we also live in a spiral galaxy, right? Which is amazing, that we have this pattern that is replicated throughout nature. And the Nautilus is one of the most gorgeous sea creatures imaginable. And they describe this cover and they talk about it. And I love this in terms of applying it to wisdom. And they say, it's pointed out that as the Nautilus grows, right, it doesn't discard its home, the shell, that it just adds on to itself. And then it seals off that older section. So it grows, it builds something new, it moves into that, then seals off the old until we have this incredible shell that just grows in the spiral. And that's really interesting to see that and imagine it as this beautiful metaphor for our lives and our attainment for wisdom. And it's pointed out that as this sea creature grows, the shell becomes ever more intricate and beautiful. And I think that is the essence of what we do as we grow and mature spiritually. Our lives become more intricate, they become more beautiful as we grow spiritually and mature. And I can think about myself and think about the falls and stumbles I've made when I was younger and learning, right? We can go back to her learning how to walk, right? All the falls and stumbles we make, and how ungraceful we are as little children learning how to walk. And until we learn how to really master walking, and we move and we become more graceful, and things become easier to do. And this is what happens when we mature spiritually as well. And I wondered, I think this is probably not the only place that this quote has appeared, and it appears under the heading of consciousness. One alone in consciousness with the infinite constitutes a complete majority. So it's one of the first things that's said in this practical wisdom booklet. One alone in consciousness with the infinite constitutes a complete majority. And how I read this is, I really think that it gets at that absolute union with, well, whatever we want to call it, the great mystery, God, great spirit, spirit, whatever we want to call this. And we know there's many, many names for this power, right? That we can achieve that union consciously. That's consciousness. We have that union. It's becoming conscious of it. And that seems to be, according to all of the philosophy that I've read, the element that is a part of this human development. We are always becoming more conscious, more self-aware of something that is a part of us as human beings. There's all these discoveries that we've made. And our biggest discoveries are the discoveries of knowing ourselves. So one alone in consciousness with the infinite constitutes a complete majority. So as we come into that unity with spirit, that is the essence of being. And one of the really lovely things about this booklet is that, there are these headings like consciousness, and then there's an affirmation that comes after it. And I love the affirmations. Sometimes I think they've become ingrained in me. So I'm not necessarily aware of when I'm making an affirmation. I may not be aware that, yes, I'm doing this affirmation right now. And yet I am. I may be driving down the road and it's dangerous, and I say an affirmation affirming that all is well, that I'm safe and guided and guarded in this moment. And that's an affirmation. It's a prayer as well. It's an affirmation, affirmative prayer. And I may not be aware of. I may not say, okay, I better do my affirmations now. It has just become a part of who I am. And this affirmation, so I like that it's pointed out, this is an affirmation for consciousness. I open the gates of my consciousness and permit spirit to flow through me. I know my search is over. I have discovered the great reality. There is only one life, one mind, one power, one present, God, absolute, unadulterated, perfect spirit. I sense the spirit within myself and see it reflected in every form, back of every experience, moving through every activity. So this is a really long affirmation. Today, I align myself with this divine presence that runs through everything and everyone. I open the gates of my consciousness and with enthusiasm permit spirit to flow through me. I enter its peace. I am secure in its perfection and protection. So here we are, with this beautiful affirmation, reminding us that, yes, this is how we grow spiritually. We are learning from one stage to the other as we grow. I think that we're sealing off fear. We're sealing off different kinds of things that are harmful to us as we grow if we continue this use of the nautilus as our metaphor. And we are absolutely, absolutely in the process of life eternal, right? The spiral doesn't stop, it just continues on this upward journey. And the next heading is into the silence. So I love how this is set up. It's almost, how do we do this? A lot of times we will read things and it's like, oh, these are really good ideas, but how do we actually do this? How do we put this stuff to work? And he's giving us a really good blueprint of how we put these teachings, these we can call them technologies. How do we put them to work? How do we do this? And we go into the silence. And any spiritual reading that you might do, puts a premium on silence, being able to move into that place that is that place of quiet, stillness, and peace. And he points out that all life is in a state of vibration. Yes, we know that this is a vibrant universe. It's vibrating, right? There's actually, we can measure this with scientific instruments. We can measure the vibration, that energy that is surrounding all of life and all of creation. That's just a part of, that's real, right? That's real. It's not a metaphor. This is a real thing. And, he says at the very center of this vibration, there appears to be something that's motionless, something which itself does not move, yet from which all motion must come. God doesn't move, but movement takes place within God. Spirit does not move anywhere, but all particular where, so to speak, exist in spirit. So this is another way of describing oneness, right? Wherever spirit is, there, it's that center from which everything, or first cause, from which everything gains its motion. And again, I have to apologize for my there's someone outside pounding, and he's investigating and adding his voice to this. And, when we go into the silence, and this is funny that we've got a barking dog here, it doesn't matter what's going on outside, right? It absolutely doesn't matter. There can be all kinds of things happening outside of us. There can be just complete chaos outside of us. But when we enter that silence, everything stops, right? And we are in that God place. And I think that most of us have experienced this. I think probably everyone has. When you get that moment of silence where you are at peace and at one with God. Or, however you want to put it, that you could just say, I'm at peace. There's something that has stopped, something that has happened, where I can just be in this moment. And he gives this example of Jesus. He says Jesus gave a good example of going into the silence when he told us that in prayer we should enter a closet and close the door. His language was symbolic. Entering the closet means withdrawing into one's own mind, for it is from our own mind that the creativeness we possess emanates. So our one mind, our individual mind, is a microcosm for the one mind, which is God's mind, right? So when we enter that silence, everything is put aside. It's not about hiding out. right? It's about going into that still place and tapping into the infinite. And remember, he's just one alone in consciousness with the infinite constitutes a complete majority. That's pretty amazing, right? To think that when we are in that still place, one with the one, that we are a complete majority for all of creation. That means that we have it all. We have it all. And that's miraculous, really, that we always have it all. And when we are conscious of it, we are in that place of spirit as us. And, I think, this next section, self-realization, we talk about self-realization, and, there's different ways of putting this self-realization. And I think in these terms, self-realization is realizing our higher self, right? It's not necessarily about realizing, individuating as a strong ego. This is more about that transcendent nature. I think there is a process that we're going through where we are individuating, where we are creating and establishing a strong ego, and not meaning that this is a pathological ego, but just this navigation system for the material world that allows us to operate on Earth, right? We need an ego, right? That's just a part of the self, but it is the small self. What the self-realization is the realization of the higher self that supersedes, the egoic self. And self-realization, and I love this, and I think this is wisdom for our time right now. I think that we could just hone in on this and know that this is practical wisdom for our time. Self-realization comes to us not by antagonizing or fighting other people's ways of believing, not by struggle or by strife, but by recognition that is by knowing the truth, by alignment with the nature of reality, which is wholeness and unity, goodness and beauty. Self-realization is not a struggle for personal attainment. It isn't setting up adversaries to knock down. As we come to the recognition of who we are, we will see that we do not have to contend with anything on earth. We do not have to struggle and find a place for ourselves in the universe. In the sight of the Almighty, which is the sight of our own spiritual natures, we are of it, no matter where we are. Anything that expresses is the light that it expresses. Oh, so we can just relax and breathe, right? We don't have to worry about whether we disagree with things as that are happening in the outer world, or our neighbor who is irritating us, whatever. We don't have to struggle with that. We are always in God. We are always safe and secure. We are always in that goodness. We are always at peace. We're always in the flow of abundance. So this is self-realization of the highest form, right? Realizing the higher self and coming into that. What we do with wisdom, I believe, is we set ourselves up to move into this place, right? Where we are receiving. We've experienced all these things. We use our human gifts, our human capabilities. We receive it. We process it. We enact it or actualize it. And we come to a place where we are those wise human beings who can navigate the world with care, love, and thoughtfulness. And most of all, love, right? That we navigate the world with love. So here we are. We express the light. We express that light, that goodness that God is. And, just taking that in, affirming it, and embodying it. I always love that Buddha said, oh, noble ones, remember who you are, right? You are noble. We have this inherent dignity that no one can take away from us because it's who we are. I don't know about you. I know I get into some situations and I feel like I am being made small somehow, right? In the circumstance. And it doesn't feel good. I feel like my dignity is being assaulted. And yet, if I can come back to this realization of who I am, doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter because there's no assault that can damage or make chinks in this higher self. Can't happen. Doesn't happen. It's only what I think, right? It's my mind. It's a mind trick, right? And we can release it. We can release that and immediately come back to who we are. These noble beings, dignified. We are those emissaries of light. And, we are forever connected with that eternal I am, that eternal, that thing that never changes. And, sometimes we might compare, right? Oh, look at this very wise person. They are so godlike. They have so much God in them. And, how would I ever be, hold a candle to this? How would I ever pray like them? How would I ever speak like them? Whatever, right? Those things that you come up, as we're learning and growing. And yet, the reality is there is just as much God in me as there is in anyone else, right? Wonderful, right? So when we go out, this is a real reminder not to be judging others, right? Because there's just as much God in them as there is in us. And that judgment can be, for the positive, or it can be, denigrating of another person. And we have to remember there's just as much God in them as there is in us. So we can aspire, to those positive qualities that we see in others, right? We aspire to that. And we can be compassionate when those qualities in ourselves are not showing, we're not expressing them in quite yet. We haven't learned how to navigate it quite yet. And that's all it is. It's learning. How do we learn to use this in the best possible way? Which brings us to the next heading in this booklet, using the power. And, there's that wonderful radio broadcasts that, would start with this incredible resonant voice saying, there's a power greater than we are, and we can use it, right? And this is exactly what that is. This section is about that there's a power greater than we are, and we can use it. And, I think that can be a little bit off-putting, maybe. How can we use God? Well, it's not necessarily that we can use it, right? Because it is us, right? It's how do we work with this? How are we going to access it and be one with it, right? So this is our, so to speak, our handbook. We don't need to be saying, there's a God. We don't have to be proclaiming it. This is what Ernest Holmes was saying. We don't have to just proclaim God, right? What we have to do, we have to prove that this power exists, right? We prove it. We are these emissaries here on earth. We're proving it that God exists. We're proving the abundance of the universe. We're proving that there is goodness. We're proving there's peace. We're proving all of these God qualities in our lives as we self-actualize. So it's up to us to prove it, right? God exists. The part of philosophy, all these thousands of years of philosophy, have centered around, is there a God? Well, yes. That's not really the question. The question is, how do we self-actualize and create a world that is in alignment with reality? How do we do that? And we can spend our whole lives thinking it's somewhere else. Oh, if I just do this, then I'll find out. Oh, if I just go to this church, I'll find out, right? Or if I just do this chanting, I'll find out. Or if I just go to the sweat lodge, I'll find out. Well, these are all, wonderful places where we go that can help support us. If I just go to, this local group, I'll find out, right? And yet it's already here. We go to places, we create community so that we can support one another in our lives, right? That we can, really actualize these things and be in the world. Really, our community is the entire world. So we don't really have to go in search of it. It's already here. The search is an inner search, if there's a search, right? It's here. It's here. So it's realizing that it is here. So we set out to prove God. Prove God in every situation. And again, this is very practical. How does God show up? We have our way showers. And Ernest Holmes felt that Jesus was the most important way shower that he had encountered in all of his research. And of course, he wasn't finished with this research, but this is what he had encountered and what he wrote about. And he Jesus emphasized love, right? And Jesus was a way shower in teaching peace, right? Teaching us to love one another, to be at peace with one another, to understand that outer circumstances don't dictate our lives, that we can be at peace no matter what. And, we can recall, all the wonderful stories and parables that Jesus used to teach. And, we are, according to Ernest Holmes, we have this at our disposal. So we are never alone. We are never just left at sea. And our job here is to prove that there is this power. We're proving it. We're proving it with our life. And this abiding peace, there's another heading, abiding peace. And I'm going to use this as this is an affirmation for abiding peace. In this peace that holds me so gently, I find strength and protection from all fear or anxiety. It is the peace of God in which I feel the love of a holy presence. I am so conscious of this love, this protection, that every sense of fear slips away from me as mist fades in the morning light. I see good in everything, God personified in all people, life manifest in every event. And, one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is how fear is playing such a big role right now in our events. It always does, but somehow I think fear is kind of, on the upswing right now. I think we have moments where, just in life, we have moments where there's fear on the upswing, anxiety on the upswing, and we seem to have been on this curve going upward to a moment where we are experience a culture of fear and anxiety. And how do we move from that? And we've already talked about how we move from that, right? So how do we bring this more into practice? This is where it's practical wisdom, right? We have to know through our spiritual practice that God is peace. God is always peace. And it's not something that's holding us down, right? Putting us in a headlock or anything. It's peace. It's just peace. It's gentle. It's gentle peace. And we can find strength and protection in that. It's not something that's strong arming. It's a gentleness. It's a gentle lead that protects us from all fear and anxiety. We don't have to fear our neighbor. We are called to love our neighbor, right? And, I tend to go on social media and see discussions that are taking place. And some of those discussions I've been quite alarmed about, right? Instead of moving closer to one another, I've noticed that there has been this tendency for people to push one another away because of what they believe, right? And yes, I understand there's times when we can't necessarily be in a harmonious relationship with someone because of oppressive beliefs or physical things that they're doing. And yet there is this necessity for us to move beyond that and love them, because we have opposite beliefs of them as well. So where do we come together? How do we do that? We come to that place of peace. We see them for who they are, divine beings, and we start from there and know that, there is absolutely no separation between them and spirit. And I have no separation between me and spirit. So we are definitely one. And when we get to that place of peace, we can move into knowing that all is well. That all is well. Yes, we may have to do a lot of work, right? We may have to do a lot of loving, but all is well. So throughout this beautiful little booklet, there is something for everyone, right? There's health. And it's a reminder of how we use this teaching, right? Health. We have to, and he states, we have to provide a mental pattern or channel which corresponds to health. And then health will flow through it into our experience. And, what I really appreciated about this is that he states fear and unhappiness are unnatural. So, and it sounds like a paradox, right? But I'm going to just put a caveat here. He says, all curative, there's a curative something at the center of every person. Okay, check. I believe that, right? There's a pattern of perfection at the center of every form. Check. I believe that. All curative arts recognize the center. All agree that disease, fear, and unhappiness are unnatural. Okay, now this seems like a paradox. Fear and unhappiness are unnatural. Okay, well, don't we have fear and unhappiness? Isn't that just part of life? Well, let's put a caveat here. Fear and unhappiness as a momentary response. Yeah, that's natural, right? But when we get stuck in a pattern of fear and unhappiness, that's unnatural, right? That's where disease can set in, right? Whether it's mental or physical, that's where it can set in when we are caught up in fear and unhappiness. We're just stuck there, right? That's the only button that's been pushed, fear and unhappiness, and it wreaks havoc with the entire system. And what happens is there's this going against the natural order of our bodies being a center of cure. Our bodies can heal themselves. That's how they're designed. They're self-healing. I'm always amazed at what our bodies are capable of doing. It is what we do with prayer, what we do with treatments is just to activate the healing nature of our body. That's the natural part of it, right? And there is life ever present in us, in these bodies. And when we realize that we are eternal, we go on, right? We go on. This energy that is known as me right now goes on. It goes on. I may not know what it looks like. I don't need, for me personally, I don't need to know what it looks like. I don't need to know that, I will be reincarnated or be in another form or, be a part of the atmosphere. I don't need to know what it is, but I do know that it goes on. This energy that is me goes on because it is the energy of the Most High. So we know that healing is possible. And we also know that we can use this power to heal others. Can when we are in a community that is healthy, there is a great healing that's taking place. We're healing one another. So it's our job to be healthy and whole so that we in this mood of love, this motivation of love, can actually heal others. We've all had the experience of someone who is so infectious with health that when they walk in the room, we feel it and we feel uplifted, right? And that presence just carries us along, right? And yet we all have that capability and we can prove it, right? We can jump in and we can begin proving this power exists through our lives. This is practical wisdom. Let's live our lives in this way. I don't want to live in fear and anxiety. I know what it feels like. It feels rotten. I want to live in that vibrancy of health. And I want others to do that too. And I want us all to know that we have the choice to live that way. So this little booklet is filled with practical wisdom. And I think that sometimes we don't have to have tons of information. What we need to have are these basic truths that we live by. And this is definitely a booklet that I would recommend for everyone to have on their shelf. Yes, this is a summation of the teachings of Science Mind. Very practical, day-to-day things that we can use. They're easy. They're easy. And, that is the paradox of our spiritual teachings. It's so simple. And all we have to do is step into it and commit and do it. And our lives are changed. And, throughout this book, love over and over and over is emphasized. Compassion is love indeed. So what we do when we're compassionate, when we perform a compassionate act, that is love in what we're doing. Compassion is love indeed. And love, he completes this by saying, the only reality. Love is a language which is universal, interpreted through every living soul and understood by all. Love will find a solution to every problem, will answer every question, and will ultimately vanquish every foe. Love begets tolerance, tolerance begets understanding, and understanding which is able to put itself in the other person's place. Love is unity, understanding, harmony. And this is the promise and the reality. It is impossible to enter a state of peace without love. Love is the only reality there is. So this week, let's just ponder this, and I hope you'll go to the archives and and pull this little booklet, have this little booklet for yourselves. It is a wonderful, wonderful point to and reminder of what science of mind is and who we are. And most of all, we deal in love. That's the power, that's the motivation that allows us to live a life that is rewarding and good and wise. So everyone, we're so happy that you're here, and I will, I hope that you will contribute to this broadcast where we talk about the writings of Ernest Holmes, his talks, the philosophies that he drew from to bring us this wonderful integrated form of wisdom. It's wisdom that is practical, that we can use. So everyone have a wonderful week.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.